All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get rolling. Starting the farm from scratch. We're gonna cover that in an hour, right? Yeah, okay, good. So, like the pastor says, you better listen quick because we're gonna get through this quick. Is it good sound back there in the back? Thumbs up, good? Okay, thank you, good. I'll try to hold this. I talk with my hands, but I'll try to hold this as steady as possible so we get a nice even flow. Christian says, thanks a lot, appreciate you. All right, so quick show of hands. I love to do this little surveys quick, get an idea on what we're doing with. So just real quick, I don't want to overlap things, but things have to be heard a couple of times sometimes before they sink in. But just for my own reference, like how many people listened to me yesterday? Oh my gosh. Okay, so I got to get some new material. Good. I'm just kidding. And how many of you have bought land in the last 24 months? First time. Bless. Oh my gosh. Congratulations. Give yourself a hand. Way to go. You are the change. That's exciting. All right. How many of you of those people who had your hands up, put your hands back up if you're getting animals for the first time, either this year you already just got them or you're going to get them in the coming year? Yeah, okay, awesome. All right, so this is the class for you. We are going to do our best to make this happen for you. So if you've heard some of this before, when my dad starts talking, I say that comment. I'm like, I've heard this before. So if you've heard what I'm about to say before, listen, we're going to go through it again, but then we're also going to try to get some new material because this is key. So starting a farm from scratch. Last hand-raising question. How many of you that have bought that land, it's under 10 acres? Yeah, okay. Under 20 acres, put your hand on back up. 20 acres? Okay, good deal. Yeah, so a lot of you are under that. Anybody bought land over 100 acres? A couple. All right, good deal. Hey, make the check to Daniel Salatin at I'm just kidding. Good for you. Congratulations. That's good stuff. So one of the things that, one of the first things I'll talk about is I want you to win. Historically speaking, Alan Nation, past editor of Stockman Grass Farmer, said that the average land ownership of a farmette or a homestead, this is what you bought, is typically between 18 to 36 months. Because you buy it, you get really excited, you go through the honeymoon stage, you realize, man, this is a lot of work, and then you sell it because it's too much work or it's too expensive and it's not as fun as it was in the first place. What I don't want that to happen to you. So what I'm going to say today, I'm going to say some of it's going to be a little bit harsher. I'm not trying to step on any toes. Like my pastor says, it's like everyone say we love Pastor Ray. So everybody loves Daniel. Okay, and because I do not want to see a for sale sign out in front of your property unless you're upgrading to something different or found a better opportunity. Okay, that's what I don't want to happen to you because then all the realtors get the money and you have to move around and that stinks. So I want you to stay in it. I want you to win. So what I'm going to try to talk about today is that. And part of that reason that happens is because it's a whole lot harder to find a farm sitter than a dog sitter, right? So those of you who already have some animals, you got your chickens, they're laying the eggs, you got your pigs, you got your goats, you got whatever. You got all this stuff you got to do. And suddenly you call up your buddy and you're like, hey, I'm going to go out of town. We're going to take our family vacation that we've always done. We go to the beach or we go to the mountains or whatever we're doing. And, I need you to watch this farm. And suddenly it's this 3 pages of instructions and you're stressed and they're texting you and it's this big deal. And so then you don't go anywhere and then your kids get mad and they don't like it. It's this whole downhill disaster. So we don't want that to happen either. And so one of the first things, if you're going to take notes, one of the first things is the KISS rule. Keep it simple, stupid. You got to keep it simple because if it's complicated, nobody wants to watch your farm and you don't want to tell people how to watch your farm. That's very difficult. I use this example a lot and it's a very quick story. And that is I went to one of my neighbor farms he was going to go to a NASCAR race. And it was toward the spring still. And he needed me to roll out a couple round bales for his cows. He just had some cows. He said, hey, can you roll out these round bales? I said, sure, no problem. And he said, come over, I'll show you how to do it, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, fine. And I know how to feed cows. I've done that a little while. I can drive a tractor. I can handle this kind of stuff. So it wasn't that big a deal. But anyway, 5 minutes later, he's still explaining to me how to open and close this specific gate and how to latch it and how to, make sure the wire and the chain and the hook and the doohickey and the thingy and this thing's attached to that thing and wrap it around this way and that. I'm like, all this could be solved by a little $4.99 D-Link hook from Lowe's, right? We could just hook it, and then I know it's hooked. But so when you think about that, one of the things I suggest is if you have a homestead, go ahead and have somebody watch your farm because if you have to go through that in triplicate, it's a good evaluation that your farm is too complicated. right? And so it's a good evaluation. Like, I'm going to have somebody come and watch my farm, and if I'm still telling them how to open and close the gate, or how to find the feed, or open the feed barrel, or where to find the scoop, or which, special cat gets a certain amount of feed, you're like, whoa, what the heck? This is complicated. And if it's complicated for them, it's complicated for you, right? And it's complicated for your kids, it's complicated for your spouse. It's a pain. So keep it simple. Make it simple. Now, it could be as simple as going and buying a $4.99 D-Link at Lowe's to close your gate. It could be as simple as so you may be familiar with the lean concept. If you haven't, look it up. It's a great practice. It's lean. And there's even book, Lean Farming, and it talks about keeping things very simple and very straightforward. And so one of the concepts is, just to give you an idea of what lean means, is to take a lot of the guesswork and explanation work out of your daily life. So, for example, in a restaurant, you've got your salt and your pepper shaker, right? Well, if the boss wants the salt and the pepper shaker set right here next to the napkin holder, he can either tell every hire that he brings in how to do it, or he can put a little white sticker and a little black sticker right on the table where he wants the salt and pepper shaker. That always goes right where you want it, right? And so that's the kind of thing, if you need to use the red scoop for the sheep and the green scoop for the chickens, whatever, that makes it very, very simple. And then that goes with the red, if I said green, green scoop for the chickens? I've already forgotten. It's already too complicated. All right, green scoop for the chickens, and that goes in the green barrel, okay? And then the green bucket, all right? Those kind of things to make it very simple, right? So you just say, all things green, go to the chickens. All things red, go to the pigs. That kind of thing, right? Keeping it simple, right? So have some watch your farm. The average person can't remember more than 3 steps at a time, right? I'm no exception. You're not that smart. That's the way it is, right? So that when you're trying to explain something, if you're going 3 steps in and you're suddenly going, oh boy, what now? Your eyes start to glaze over. You're 6, 7, 8 steps in, you're complicated, right? This is where military is really good. If you give more than 3 steps to somebody, they can't follow it. They know that, right? Very simple. Keep it simple. Keep that 3 steps, that old rock and roll song. Give me 3 steps. Yeah, that's what you need. 3 steps only. 3 steps toward the door. All right. We also see, number 3, we also see an inverse relationship to how long you keep the farm versus how much money you spend on it. So if you're spending money like a drunken sailor, you're going to be putting the for sale sign up really fast. So one of the things that I'm going to help today is talk about is spend less. I want to see you spend it very slowly. You've already invested possibly your life savings into this land, and so you don't need to go invest your next life savings in the rest of the stuff, right? I mean, how many times have we seen everybody run out, they've bought their piece of property, the next thing they do, they go right down to the local equipment dealer. I won't call any names of green or yellow or orange or whatever, but you're going down to the local equipment dealer and you buy not only the tractor, but you're buying every single attachment, front and back, because you have to be able to mow your field, fix your fence, push your snow, lift it, right? Now suddenly you're not farming, you're just a great big depreciation hole for all of your equipment. And then when you sell it, it goes on Facebook Marketplace or at an equipment sale, and you've lost half of your life savings because you've spent it all. So I want you to have very, very affordable products. I want you to have things that will keep you from spending all of your savings so that you keep it. Okay? I don't want you to lose your property. I do not want to see the for sale sign up because that puts your money in something else. So again, when you're thinking about buying something, you think, okay, Daniel said the more I spend, the better chance I have of not being here. So don't spend the money if at all possible, because I really believe that. I mean, I don't do a ton of consulting, but I do a little bit. And the more I see, the more consulting I do, the more money they spend. And so the richer they are, the more money they're throwing at stuff like, oh, we'll just buy that. We'll just take care of that. I'm going, oh, gosh, this is going to be a for sale. And unfortunately, it is. And I don't want that for you. Okay, so let's get into the basics. All right. Let's see. The next thing is, remember, don't do it all. Do what you can. All right. So you say, how does this have to do with starting a farm from scratch? Well, if you don't have any animals and you don't have anything yet, I want you to be able to continue that road all the way up and do well. Okay. So starting a farm from scratch. I know you've gone to a bunch of talks yesterday. You're going to talks already. You're going to go to more talks. You're going to go to all these booths. You're going to think, man, I want to do all that. I want to have sheep. I want to spin wool. I want to, milk cows, make butter, make kefir. I want to store everything. It just came from, Annie talks. I got to ferment everything, blah, blah, blah. Hold on. take a breath, right? Do a couple things that you really enjoy. And I said yesterday, most farms, most homesteads are overstocked. Means you have too many animals. So you want the sheep, the pigs, the goats, the dairy cow, the chickens, you got the meat birds, you don't have all this stuff. Whew, slow down, pump the brakes. You got 5 acres, you got less than 10 acres. We saw the hands going up. You don't have that much space. Now you can grow a ton. Don't get me wrong. We're going to talk about how much you can do, but keep it real, all right? Keep it real. So don't feel like you have to do it all. Don't do it all. What you do want to do is become interdependent, not independent, right? As a homesteader, the ones that lived and died were the ones that worked together versus the ones that didn't, right? When you're talking about historically. So work with your close neighbors, whether it's some type of coalition, whether it's some type of organization, or whether it's just going down the road and talking to somebody. Work together. So maybe you raise the pigs this year and they raise the sheep. Maybe you switch that the next year. Maybe they raise the dairy cow and you raise the beef cow, right? Think about those and I know you're like, well, what does that have to do with starting my farm? Well, because if you try to raise the beef cow, the dairy cow, the sheep, the pigs, you're not going to have a farm for long. And I don't want that to happen. So I want to set you up for success. Okay, build community. Do what you can, build your community. Incredibly important. Okay, these are, the next thing is Darren Doherty's Laws of Permanency. He will be at the Stockman Grass Farmer gathering at Polyface this year. He's from Australia, probably the most premier mind in landscape design and water capture of our time. Incredible person. And this is his laws of permanency that he's brought in from both permaculture, from P.A. Yeoman's book, Water for Every Farm, and his own travels. But he has them better, and I have to give him credit because they're straight out of his stuff. But anyway, Darren's laws of permanency. Number one, when you're looking for a place and you've already bought a place, is climate. You can't really do anything about climate. It's hot here in Tennessee. It's hot today. It's hot. There's nothing we can do about it. It is just going to be hot, right? If you live in Arizona, it's going to be dry. There's things you can do. There are things you can do to mitigate it, but it is hot and it is dry and it is high desert. That's what Arizona is, okay? So choose your climate. If that's where you want to live, great. Don't complain about it. Embrace it, enjoy it, and go for it. But embrace your climate. Enjoy it. Another one is finance. You know, you live in outside of San Francisco where, you know, bread costs $7 and gas is, you know, $10 a gallon. That's something that you don't really have a big control over, okay? You live in, you know, impoverished South, whatever, and it's quite the polar opposite, all right? So just take that into account. Again, not wrong, neither one's better than the other. Just take that into account. That's pretty permanent. You can't do anything about it. We talked about community already. The people around you, you can't control whether they come, go, stay, whether they are nice, not nice. You know, those are pretty permanent things. You know, when you're in relationships, the only person you can control is yourself. The other people around you kind of control themselves, so you have to be that's pretty permanent. Next one is geography. You know, where you are in Tennessee, where you are in the map of things. That's pretty permanent once you set down. The next one is typography. That's land shape. So you can come in, you can bring in dozer in, you can knock down the mountain if you want to, but the mountain's already there. It's pretty permanent, right? And so if you're at the bottom of the hill of a valley and your, you know, conventional farmer neighbor is spraying glyphosate stuff over on this side and all that's running down the hill towards you, again, he's pretty permanent. You're not going to change him. And the way the ground is shaped and the way the water runs is pretty permanent. You're not going to change that either, okay? Again, nothing is wrong or right about this list. It's just laws of permanency. And they're going from the most permanent down to the most easily changed, okay? So when you're talking about building your farm and setting up your property, looking at these laws of permanency and building what is going to work the best on your farm is very important, okay? All right, so we talked about, we got climate, finance, community, geography, topography. So we're at 5. I think we've got more than 10, but anyway, it's a lot. The next one is water, okay? We can go for days and days and days without food. That's been proven. You can only go 1.5 to 3 days without water. If we cut all the water off in here, we're going to be in real trouble real quick. All right, so without life, without water, there is no life. That's a biblical metaphor, that's a real metaphor, and it's the reality of life. If we don't have water, we're not getting anything. And so one of the things to starting your farm, what I don't want you, water is the most heavy thing to move around, okay? All right, and so what I don't want you to do is be toting buckets of water, okay? That's one of the first, they say, how do I start my farm from scratch? I need usable, flowable, tap intoable, okay, non-carried water, okay? Now you say, well, Daniel, how do I do that? Well, you're going to have to come to another session, or we're going to have to do this again, because I can't spend the rest of the time talking about how to do that. But the simple answer is in Darren Doherty's beautiful Australian term, is what we have called a game changer. It's black polyethylene pipe, and it moves water from one side of the hill to the other, and it's a game changer. That's what he's talking about. It's a game changer. And so if we're going to say, okay, we're going to use petroleum products, we're going to put it in black plastic pipe. If we can only use petroleum thing for two things, we're going to put in black plastic pipe to move water, and we're going to put it on greenhouses so we can extend our seasons. Those are the two things we're going to use petroleum products for. But using piping to have movable water everywhere, okay? And again, if you have 5 acres, you're going to put a water point, so you've got a 25 or 50 foot garden hose. Buy them anywhere. They're easy. Get the good ones. Don't get the ones that kink. Don't get the ones that dry rot. Spend a lot of money. I just told you not to spend money, except for now. Spend a lot of money on a good garden hose. Don't get the cheap stuff. Get a good one. And when you have a garden hose, you now have, if you get a 50-footer, you've got 50 feet that way and 50 feet that way from your water point. Okay? So you think about that. I've got a water point here. I've got 50 feet this way. And if I go to the next water point, I got 50 feet back. That's 100 feet. I don't need them to come perfectly together. I can give myself probably another 25 to 50 feet in between. Okay, so that's about how often you're going to want to put your water points in if you're a small farm. I mean, we're running hundreds of acres. We put them about 100 yards apart because we're running 200 head of cattle in a herd or 300 head of cattle in a herd. You might be running 3 cows or one little pen of chickens. That's perfectly fine. But again, like I said, you don't have to have a water point every 10 feet. You just need one that you can moderately reach from one spot to the next. Does that make sense? Because I want you to see water coming out of a pipe, not out of a bucket, not care. I mean, remember, the average cow is going to drink 10 to 15 gallons of water per day. You don't have time, energy, or stuff to do that. And that's because I'm getting ahead of myself, but energy comes into play big time when you run out of time and energy, and as far as permanency. But anyway, here we go. So when you have that water, that is incredibly important. So for example, just real specific, you want to have a permanent grid. If you have an access lane, let's just say this tent is our property. Okay, it's perfectly rectangle, which is, again, kind of utopia, but let's say it is. We're going to have an access road right up the middle by these poles, and we're going to run our water line right alongside that access trail, and now suddenly we have water here on this side for cross-fencing or for chickens or for whatever on this side, and we've got water on that side for the same point, and we've only run the water that one way, okay? So spend money to make sure that you can pump your water, move your water, or transport your water. When you're talking about water, the next thing you want to do is you want it to be automatic if possible, okay? I don't want to see you standing there holding a hose. That's about as goofy as carrying buckets, right? So I want to see you float valves are really cheap at Tractor Supply. They're really easy. You can go to we have a couple of suppliers on our website. Go to the website, polyfacefarms.com, and you can go to the resource tab, and there's a whole list of things that we use on a regular basis. Check them out. There's a place called Neville Supply. They have a great float valve system that comes in from the bottom of the tank, not the top. It's full flow. It's awesome. I don't get any money from this. I'm just saying we try to give you things that work, all right? But don't sit there and hold the hose. I started with rabbits when I was 7 years old. I say if you've got 1 doe or 100 does, use an automatic drinker. So you got the little line. It's gravity flow. It's super easy. They all have their little nipple. You fill 1 bucket. You've watered 20 rabbits or 30 rabbits, right? Don't have the little individual bottle drinkers from wherever. That drives you crazy. They're a pain. They're expensive. They're hard to clean. Yada, yada, yada. Don't use those. Have an automatic system. And believe it or not, it's cheaper. The little hose and the little nipple drinkers and and you say, well, how do you plumb it's simple. To plumb in the plastic tubing, you cut the plastic tubing at 45 degrees, right? Right before at the end. You bend it around. You drill a hole in the bucket that is slightly larger than the inside diameter of the pipe. and you force the pipe through on a nice warm day like this. The pipe is very supple. You grab it with a pair of pliers on the inside, you pull it through, boom, your pipe's in the bucket. Okay? Don't have to buy a bunch of plumbing parts. You literally, it's that simple. You know, people say, well, man, I mean, I've been asked to do those kind of demos at things like this, and I probably should, because it's that kind of stuff that saves you literally $50 of parts and 5 trips to Lowe's, because you can't do any plumbing project without at least 3 trips. Like, that's just the rule. What you could be redoing your entire house, your entire kitchen, or plumbing one piece of piping into a bucket, and you're going to make 3 trips to the plumbing store. That's just a given. Anyway, so those are just a couple of suggestions on the water. I mean, I'm not going to go into specifics. I mean, again, 3/4 inch line, 1 inch line, 120 PSI pipe is plenty. All the government stuff talks about like 200, 250 PSI. That stuff is super thick. It's crazy expensive. It's hard to work with. You don't need that kind of pressure. Your farm is too small. It's coming right off your house, right? It's not, you're running on 35, 40 PSI, 45, 50 PSI tops, all right? You don't need that kind of pressure. So the 120 PSI, it all taps right into a garden hose. All those fittings are super easy to connect to a garden hose. Why do I like garden hose instead of the fancy quick connects? Well, because number one, they're affordable. Number two, they're readily accessible. And number three, if the wheels fall off of everything, there's going to be a lot of that stuff laying around. Okay? So you have the best chance of cobbling something together if it's just standard stuff. You know, that's why the preppers always use 9 mil, because there's going to be 9 millimeter stuff laying all over the place, right? Well, the same thing with a garden hose. There's going to be garden hose stuff everywhere. That's going to be the last thing to disappear is garden hose stuff. So buy a little bit more expensive stuff. Use it, enjoy it, but go ahead and use that because it's very simple and very transferable. Water, water, water. Don't tote it. Don't wait on it to fill. Make sure it's in every access paddock, etc. Make sure you're toting water, because that is the most number one. When you're looking about what an animal needs to survive on a regular basis, the most number one thing that it takes in every day is what? Not water. Air. Right. Number one thing it takes in air. So air quality, I got you. Air quality is number one, right? So air quality to your brooder, air quality to your birds, airflow to your pig. That's one of the reasons that Joel guy's always harping on bank barns, because they have terrible airflow, right? So we want airflow through our buildings, okay? So airflow is number one. Water is number two. You were close. I give you credit for it. It's good. It was a trick question anyway, because I was talking about water. But anyway, so water is number two, right? So quality water, plentiful water, and having it easily accessible is number two, making sure that water is easy. Because again, looking at how animals drink water from stale, stagnant situations like ponds or even like stream puddles or whatever versus fresh, clean water out of a tank, it's incredible. I mean, we have a couple of paddocks on Polyface where we have a small river. You people would call it a creek because you're out here, you're like, that's not a river, that's a creek, and it kind of is. But anyway, where it's real twisty and curvy, we're not big on putting the animals in the creek. I'll probably get all sorts of cancellations here on social media when this gets posted. But anyway, it's like a couple days a year, and we know that animal access with water is healthy when it's done in a very short way, okay? There's pictures, beautiful pictures from Holistic Management where they've taken animals and say run them through a stream bank, and instead of the bank being straight and eroding all the time, they knock down the bank grows grass, and suddenly it doesn't erode anymore. So cattle, using cattle for strategic tasks in and around water is helpful. So anyway, it doesn't matter. Point is, we got a couple paddocks where they drink water out of the river. So they just drink out of the river. Well, then you move them to the next paddock and they drink it out of the tank, and they drink it like they've never seen water before. Well, they could have gone and got water anywhere, but they like the water out of the tank way, way better. Okay, so fresh, clean water. Again, whether you're cutting the bottom out of a 55-gallon barrel, again, if it's coming in automatically, you don't need a great big reservoir where the animals are because it's coming in all the time, right? So if you've got 4 or 5 head of anything, literally 18 to 20 inches cut out of the bottom of a plastic 55-gallon barrel with one of these float valves hooked to it, boom, you have a water source, and you totally are taking care of your water, right? And it's amazing, and you're like, Daniel, why are you belaboring this? Well, because it's amazing how many people don't realize how simple that is. And y'all are smart, you're here, you've got that figured out. I literally had a conversation one time. I got a call from animal control. hey, neighbor says your animals don't have any water. I'm like, what? That's ridiculous. I was just there. They're like, oh, no. I said, what'd they say? I said, well, they said they're fenced out of the creek. I'm like, well, yeah, duh. We fence our animals out of the creek. That's what we're supposed to do. He's like, well, then how are they getting water? She said, well, how are they getting water? I said, out of a tank. She said, well, how does the tank? She's like, well, there's a lot of cows. How does that tank take care of them? There's a small tank, like a 100-gallon tank, and it's like 250 cows. Like, well, how are they getting water out of the, how's the tank getting water all the time? I was like, from a pipe. And she goes, well, where does the water come from in the pipe? I said, from a pump. So, a day of my time later, and animal control visiting say, yeah, you're fine. You've got a human problem, not an animal problem. I was like, yeah, no kidding. Anyway, it doesn't take a lot of water flowing to a pipe and flowing to a tank to take care of all your animals, okay? And that's the number one time waster that we see on a small farm is hauling water, toting water, or filling up small water jugs, okay? I belabor that because I don't want you to, so starting your farm, realize laws of permanency is what you need to do. This is your checklist of what I do to start my farm from scratch, okay? Start with all the things I mentioned, and now we're at water, okay? I haven't mentioned getting animals yet. Bear with me. Okay, next is access. We have to be able to get to the land. If we can't get to the land, we can't do anything with it. If we can't get to the animals, we can't do anything with the animals. We got to be able to get there. Now, if your farm is as big as this tent, kind of non-consequential. If your farm is 100 acres, you need to figure that out. Use the permaculture plan, and that is where you drive and you create ruts, and the grass doesn't grow. That's a road. Make it such. You don't have to say, well, Daniel, where do I put my road? Just don't do anything on your farm. Don't put up any permanent fences. Don't put any roads. Just drive. Do your thing. And suddenly, you're going to drive over here once or twice. That's no road. You're going to drive this way 100 times. It becomes a beat path, a dirt path. That's a road. Put gravel on it, fence it out. That's a road. Boom, done. Now, should you consider where you drive, and should I drive down here through the swampy area? Of course not. But think about that and where you're going and how to get there, so that you're driving in ways. Now, again, if you want to drive from here's the house and over there's the barn, well, now, how do I get over there? Well, maybe you come off your house and you've got a lane that goes straight to that corner and straight to this corner. And now I've got two little roads, and I can go, if I'm over there at the barn and I need to go way over there, I can just zoom up by the house and there. And now I've kind of cut the farm in half. You want to try to put your roads and accesses as close to the midpoint of your properties as possible. Okay? And that makes it really easy for running our water line, because the water line follows the road. Boom, now you've got everything in one spot. You're not randomly digging in the middle of a field and hit a water line. Or driving an electric fence stake in the ground, like driving a ground rod, and then you got a geyser. It's all that stuff's happened. It happens. All right. Next on your law of permanency is forestry. You can plant some trees. When's the best time to plant trees? Yesterday. Next best time is today. Plant trees. That's great. Laws of permanency. So laws of permanency. You think, oh, Daniel, as soon as I get this farm, I need to plant trees. No, you need access. You need water, you need access, because if you plant the trees and you can't get to them to check on them, and you can't get water to them to water them in a drought, the trees die. Okay? You go to ancient Rome, you see roads still there from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. You don't see any trees. Trees are dead. Okay? Laws of permanency, these matter. Please start your farm this way. If you follow this through, you will be successful. I don't promise you, but it'll help you. Forestry, plant your trees. Now, again, you want a beautiful tree-lined drive? Awesome. I know you want to plant those apple trees today. I know it. You went there, you bought them, you've already got them. You're like, Daniel, I just bought them. I want to plant the trees today. Well, what if you want a road right where the apple tree was? You're like, shoot, I should have waited. Yeah, you should have. It's okay. Put them under some mulch, put them in a pot, put them in a bigger pot, wait till next year. They're still going to be fine. Plant them next year. Because if you want that beautiful tree line drive and you don't want a bunch of fences out in the middle of your pasture fencing out these trees, you want them right along your road, okay? But you don't know where your road goes yet because you just bought your farm yesterday. Give it some time. Develop this. Figure out your road access. Figure out where you're going to put your water, then plant your trees. Now, if you want to put your orchard over here in the corner and you've already decided that's where it is, that's the best climate, best slope, okay, good. Fence it out, put your deer fence up, go for it. That's fine. But you see what I'm saying as far as how you're building your property on laws of permanency. Thinking back over generations past and gone, what do we still see? Okay? We see the geography, we see the topography, we see how they dealt with finance and community. We see aqueducts, we see water, we see roads, and forestry is way down the list. Next is buildings. Basically, if they're not movable, don't build them. Like, oh, but I bought this farm. It's so cute. It has this beautiful barn on it. It's a pain in the neck. Don't do it. It's an albatross, and now suddenly you're married to it. We all love the cute, iconic barn. There's a bouncy house over there. That's what the kids want to bounce in a barn. It's not what you need right off. Everything should be mobile and modular. You've heard that 3Ms things from the Joel guy. It needs to be portable because you might not be there forever. You might not like it in that field forever. You might find out that's a terrible place for those animals, okay? Make it portable. Again, I know you want a shed to put your brand new tractor in. A, you already messed up because you shouldn't have bought the tractor. B, you don't know exactly where you should put the barn yet because you may want it here, you may want it there, you may figure out this is a wet spot all the time. You don't know. This is what the age-old, whether it be ancestrals or whether it be Native Americans or whatever, they talk a talking story, and it means they're passing on this legacy information in a story form, and that's what we do as. What do we do with aging folks that are in these businesses? That's what we do. We impart this knowledge through story, through ancestral knowledge of this was always wet, this was always cold, this valley over here was always had green grass. You could always find the cattle up, the bison and the elk were always in this little meadow. Why? Because they pass it down through generations of knowledge, of story, not from some book or some YouTube they watched or read, okay? Spend time reading the story, figuring it out. Buildings. They should be mobile if possible. If you have to build a shed, make it as cheap a pole shed as possible and put it in a place that is make a hub. Don't put it 500 yards away. You're building your house and then your barn should be very, very close, right? You should be able to walk very easily from your house to your barn or to your shed or to whatever because you want it to be close by. Typically, that's where the animals are going to be in bad weather. You don't want to be out in bad weather very long. You don't want a big road expensive to it. And we want to be able to access it very quickly, okay? So, and as we get into energy, you want it to be fast. The next thing in permanency is fencing. You're like, are we going to get to animals yet? No, getting there. Bear with me. Fencing. Start with your fencing, because if you don't control the animal, you can't have the animal, right? I could belabor you with stories of being in Pennsylvania and dropping off a set of cattle that we thought were locked in a barn with a real fancy latch that you had to loop around the thingy and then hook it to the doohickey, and then we woke up the next morning and that little latch and that little doohickey to the thingy was not there anymore, and neither was the gate and neither were the cows. With the last ounce of battery on my phone as the rain is pouring down on me and I'm 5 miles from the farmhouse, I call the owner. I was like, I'm at the corner of this road and this road. The cattle are lost. Come and get me. Control. Yeah, Master Yoda is correct. You must learn control. We have to control the animals. If we don't control the animals are controlling us, and they're all over the place. Please control your animals. So I'm a big proponent of having a place. If you're getting cattle specifically, cattle or hogs specifically, have a place where you know so and not hope so. Okay? Some of you will get that here in a bit. You want to be able to put them in a place where you can know they will stay and not hope they will stay. So we were getting past the baling wire, the chewing gum, and the baling twine and the prayer, right? I've been part of plenty of those working facilities. I've been part of plenty of those places, but we want to get to know so, not hope so. And if that's just a small, it can be something as big as this stage. You're getting one dairy cow. Great. Oh, but she's so calm. I've seen her. She's so friendly. Where she's used to. Make sure you know so. Even if, you're getting your one dairy cow, great. You're gonna build a fence, a pen as big as this stage. That's plenty big, that's fine. But when you drop her off that trailer, she goes in that pen, and it is a pen that you know she's gonna stay, not that you hope she stays. And that goes for those beautiful little pigs. They're just laying there, they're so calm. How could they possibly run away? Really fast, exactly, really fast. Everybody that's got pigs got a pig loading story, don't you? You got a pig loading story? You got a pig chasing story? Absolutely, I've got those. You better believe it. Enjoy it, because when you drop them off, man, you sleep really well at night when you drop them into a no-so pen, not a hope-so pen. Okay? And whatever that takes, I mean, make it look like Fort Knox. Here's a rule of thumb. If a cow can put her neck and nose over a fence, she thinks that she can get over it. So it's real simple. If you have that no-so pen, if you want it high enough to where she can just maybe put her nose up over the top of it and look out. You don't want her neck to get over top of it, right? And then you can go to bed. You can wake up the next morning, and that beautiful cow that you bought yesterday and you're so excited about, she's gonna be right where you left her, because you're safe. Okay. Same with the pigs. Same with everything else. Okay. Spend some time on your fence. Now, that's to control your animals when you receive them. Now, if you're gonna actually put them out, you're talking about fencing. Yes, you want to run electric fencing in some type of grid. Again, this is a more integrated talk. It's a more specific how-to thing, so I'm not going to dig deep into it, but fencing is your next permanent thing, because you need to be able to control them. So you need electricity. You need to be able to run your fencing. It can be single-strand electric. It's fine. It doesn't have to be woven wire or 7 strands of high tensile. It can be very cheap. But here's the other thing. How many of you have bought some animals and, they're trained to electric fence? Yeah, 5 miles. The cattle are lost. Come and get me. Okay? I've been there. Make sure that have this, even if all you do is you drop this animal in this little stage pen and you run one little training wire right here, and you put some delectables over there on this side of the wire, and you double train that cow, then okay, she's not eating that. She's not going to get out. We're fine. Now we can let her out into a bigger pasture with electric fence. Have a training area. And that's for pigs. It's for sheep. It's for cows. It's for whatever, okay? Make a training area. Train them to electric fence. Then when you put them out on electric, you know what you're going to do, and it's not, I hope so. There's the stories of animals running across hills out of sight because they were trained to electric fence is vast. So I don't want that to happen to you. It's very frustrating and very sad. Okay, next on laws of permanency. Soil. Meaning, if you come up to me and you're like, Daniel, I'm looking for land. Should I consider soil? Look how far down the laws of permanency it was. I don't care. You can fix bad soil. That's really all I need to say about it. Meaning, yes, soil is a huge part of it, but it is less permanent. You can change the land and the soil faster than you can change the fence. And the fence, we're talking about very temporary fencing that happens very easily. Now, does it take time? Yes, but it's very changeable, okay? It's not permanent, right? So soil is much less important to when you're making a purchase decision, when you're making even like business financial decisions like we're talking about now, than your fencing and all the other things I've mentioned beforehand, okay? Because we can fix it. We really can. Soil. Hey, next thing in laws of permanency, livestock. We can finally get some animals, right? That's really key. So we can finally get some animals because you can water them, you can control them, you can get to them, right? And you can enjoy them. Now, here's the last thing of laws of permanency. The most fragile thing on this list, the most finite thing that you have the least amount of is your energy. Your lifespan and your energy. The Bible talks about it being a vapor, and it's so true. You think, man, I can tote this water, I'm fine. Whew. That's fine for about 6 months. Ugh. I'm fine. I can walk that half a mile to the barn. It's my exercise program. It's all good. You're 65, 70. You're like, poof, that's a long way. You had a long night up with the kids all night. Like, I don't want to go all the way to the barn. That's a trek. Ugh. Right? The energy of our life is the most finite, lack of least permanent item on this list. So, build in things that use less of it, okay? My grandfather he was an accountant, he used a lot of numbers, and he said that you wanted to make sure that you did not spend more than 1/3 of your day, Okay, and we're not talking about a farmer's day. We're talking about more of a regular day. Let's talk about like a 10-hour day, not a 14 or a 16-hour day. Let's talk. I'll meet you in the middle at a 10-hour day. We do not want to spend more than a third of our day, so about 3.5 hours, okay, on repetitive chores every day. So when I'm helping you, if I was to come to your farm and say, Daniel, I want you to come and evaluate my homestead and whatever, I'd say, how much time are we spending? Now, again, I'm talking about you being fully employed, not just trying to get your chores done quick and get to whatever other job you have, which is totally fine. You're like, Daniel, this is my hobby. I do it on the weekends. I don't really care. Okay, that's totally different. You're wanting to turn this into a business. You want to pay the bills. You want to leave outside employment. You want to be on the farm full time. Okay, awesome. Well, don't spend more than a third of your time, 30% of your time on repetitive chores. That means something you have to do again tomorrow. All right? That's a great self-audit that you can do today. You can go home on your farm tomorrow and you're sitting there after a Sunday nap and you can start evaluating. How much time does it really take me to do this? And run a stopwatch. Keep a journal for 4 or 5 days, a week. See where you end up. Because if you find out that, man, I'm spending 5-6 hours a day on something that I have to turn around and do again tomorrow, you are not going to make progress. You are going to be stuck in a routine and a rut and not able to get ahead. You're not going to be able to get to those projects that are exciting to you, that are dreaming for you, that are hopes and dreams, or that things that you're going to want to make you more efficient. Like, oh, I'd love to put a water line to that back 40, but I don't have time because I'm toting water all the time, right? You got to figure out a way to have enough time in your day. So one of the things that we really work with, even what I've said now already, making the water flow by itself, having the cattle trained to electric fence so you can move them every day very easily, having these kind of efficiencies so that you're not spending more than about 3 to 4 hours of your time on repetitive chores. Now, how can you cheat that? Here's how you would cheat it. For example, you've got electric netting in what we call a feather net. So you got your layers in your netting. Well, the netting only has to be moved, maybe the whole structure and the netting and everything, the whole paddock, if you will, gets moved, let's say, twice a week. All right? That's not a repetitive chore because it's not daily. All right? So going out and feeding the chickens, opening the nesting boxes, or gathering the eggs or whatever, that's repetitive. You have to do that again tomorrow. You can put some feeder in a bulk feeder or whatever, and that does help, of course, and you can do that. But the idea of checking on the birds and gathering the eggs, that has to happen every day, all right? Moving the netting doesn't have to happen every day. You can move that, once a week or twice a week, whatever. So that's something you can do in the middle of the day. You can cheat that a little bit. And you're going to group your work. So let's just say you're like, man, I'm working a 40-hour week still, and I'm doing this on the side. I'm trying to make this work. So on a Saturday, you are going to move the structure and set up. You're going to take down the one net, set up the next net, move the structure, take care of the birds, etc. Then you're also going to go ahead and take down the other net and set up the next net so that Wednesday afternoon when you're busy, all you have to do is open the net, the chickens go into the new paddock, you move the structure, and you're done, and it happens in like 15 minutes, right? So you're grouping your work. That's how we're going to be able to do this on an easy way and make it all happen. Less daily time. That's very key. So I talked about the water auto, filling the water, all those things. Make sure that it's simple. Try to look at your time and say, okay, I spend 45 minutes a day doing this. How can I make that 10 minutes? Right? What kind of easy steps can I do to make that half the time, right? Look at the biggest chunk of your time. Group it. Like, okay, I spend an hour a day feeding the animals, 2 hours a day watering the animals, 45 minutes a day moving the animals. All right, look at your big, Dave Ramsey, right? We're in Tennessee. Dave Ramsey at Snowball It. Find your biggest time waster, your biggest time spent. How can I shorten that one? And then you're going to roll that into the next one, okay? Although there is something to be said for easy hanging fruit. You're like, well, let's see. I spend 45 minutes a day feeding the chickens. If I went to a bulk feeder and I only had to do it once a week, that would save me all 45 minutes of that every day. Okay, I'm good with that. Let's put in the automatic feeder. That makes sense, okay? I go to the feed store every week to pick up feed, and I get a couple bags at a time. Well, maybe I can go every other week and build a little storage box so the mice don't eat it, and now I can go only twice a month instead of 4 times a month. Well, that just saved you half your time, right? Okay? And the feed will last that long, no problem. Hey, it'll last a month. So maybe you can go once a month. You just cut your feed your feed travel time by over, like four times. You cut it way down, right? Easy. So look at those kind of things. Those are killers. And I'm just like, well, what does this have to do with starting my farm from scratch? Well, it means that you can actually keep doing this and not burn yourself out. Burnout is the number one reason people quit. And so when I say I want you to start your farm from scratch and be successful, these are all steps that are critical to make sure that you can continue doing this for the long haul, even into whether you started in your later years or are going to take this all the way through into your later years. Our energy and our life's energy is our most finite and most fragile piece of this puzzle. I want you to be able to do that, right? I want to be able to do this till I'm throwing dirt in my face, as they say, right? That's fine. But we need to set it up in a way to do it. I've got at least another 15 minutes. I want to not continue to ramble on. I've got more things I can say. Surprise. But I want to take some questions because I know if you have that question, there's probably 10 or 15 other people in this room that have those questions. So let's go ahead and dive into some questions, and that may take me down some rabbit holes, and we'll see where we go. Yes, your hand shot right up. Go ahead.
You talked about moving cows.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And then do you mow?
Yeah. Okay, so her question is, after you move the cows every 3 days. Absolutely. Now, or how often do I move the cows? Well, we want to get to dailies. So we're going to move the cows daily if possible, okay? And then when you move the cows, then what do you do afterwards? Well, if you've grazed them properly, you don't need to do anything. You just leave it. Okay, well, we spent all yesterday on weeds, but I'll touch on it very quickly. Remember, if a cow eats it, it's not a weed. If it's telling you something, it's not a weed. And if it's growing there for the reason, then the soil needs it for some reason, right? So if you're growing thistles over a dirt lot, I'm using that as, I'm not saying you are specifically, I'm just saying like, the housing development next to you, they plow off the driveway and they plow off the build site and then they hit a snag and nobody buys the property and it sits there for 6 months. Well, what grows? Thistles, because the nature knows that it needs whatever biomass and carbon it's growing there, it needs to stay there. And the way nature does that is by growing something that's so prickly and nasty that nothing eats it, right? So it just means if you have a bunch of weeds, typically it means, and I'm not picking on you, it's just a typical indicator, is it typically means your soil is very infertile and needs plants that stay there because it needs the energy. Okay, and so if you graze it first and you want to mow it down to make it look better, I will not discourage you from doing that. However, it's less necessary than you might think. So if you want to mow after grazing, so only mow after grazing, get your animals to daily moves if possible, and bush hog or mow after grazing. And you will see your weeds begin to get better over years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Not tomorrow, not next week, but over time. As your soil increases, your soil, again, will increase in quality based on that level of permanency. Yeah, good question. Good question. Yes, right there in the back.
So you're doing rotational grazing with your cattle.
Yes.
You mentioned stock tanks.
Yes.
You have multiple?
Okay, good. The question is about stock tanks and watering your animals when you're moving them. Great question. So we have one herd and one stock tank. The stock tank moves with the animals. Right. You're just dumping it and moving it. Now, so you say, well, dang, that's wasting a lot of water. Not that much. It's 25, 50 gallons. So what, right? It costs you pennies even if you're buying water from the city, that's pennies. And so it's way cheaper than buying a bunch of stock tanks. And what your key there is you don't want your animals to be coming to the same place all the time because that creates trails, it creates heavy impaction, and it creates the opportunity for non-movable infrastructure, which then creates locked-in pathogens and problems, right? So you want the animals to be able to, we didn't really talk about migration starting your farm, but you need your animals to migrate so that they're leaving yucky stuff behind and they're going on to fresh stuff. And the best way to do that is to move everything. So I was talking to somebody the other day and they're putting their mineral box and their water tank all on a shade structure. And so the shade structure moves. Was that you? Oh, okay, that was you. Okay, so yeah, this guy right here. So he's got his shade structure, his water point, and his mineral box all in the same thing, and it all moves together. We didn't dive that deep today, but yes, you want to move. And so that's why I say you need a water point, like a connection, right? Like a power outlet. Imagine your water system like a power outlet. You've got one of those every 10 feet in your house, right? Well, that's so that your vacuum cord can reach from one to the other. Same thing. Great question. Yes, right here. How are we preventing freezing for the water systems? Well, down here it's less important than where I am, but in general, you're burying it to you're burying it deep enough to. Oh, the stock tank itself. Okay, stock tank itself. Couple things. One, you're going to either the cows drink a lot less in the winter, so that helps. Number two. You can overflow it a little bit, which is what we'll typically do. We'll set a spot where it's just going to run over a little bit and continue flowing. You can disconnect it in the evening, drain out the hose, and hook it back up in the morning. I mean, there's little things like that. But again, those type of things are much simpler to do than to install those big, fancy, frost-free red and yellow drinkers. They're less expensive, it's less of an issue, and it's much more portable and flexible. And really what it comes down to, you're talking about maybe, I mean, unless you're living in Michigan, okay, you're talking 2 to 3 weeks out of the winter. That's an issue, right? And it's not worth, well, that's another thing. Build your operation, great point, I'll segue to this. Build your operation to handle 95% of the situation and build flexibility and redundancy in for the other 5%. Right? So if you're really efficient and really effective in 95% of the time, you can waste a little time or spend a little extra problem time for that extra 5%. So you can either go and spend thousands and thousands of dollars on permanent water systems, digging your water lines down to 2-3 feet deep, blah, 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 so that you've taken care of all 100-year freezes and all this stuff. Or you can just say, wow, for a week out of the year, I'm going to waste a little water. Not a big deal. Save the time, save the efficiency. I think I'm going to work your way over and hit you. Go ahead.
We're in that situation with very poor soil,
Yep.
things coming out. It was
Sure.
fields, and so
Yep.
it's dead soil.
Yep.
How valuable is planting cover crops?
Okay. Great. You've got terrible soil, very depleted soil from an old crop field, and you want to build it back. What's the best thing for it? Do I plant something or what else? Okay. Here's the thing. The reason it's dead soil and the reason it's growing nothing now is because the soil is not able to support anything. So the problem is if you plant stuff now, typically the soil is not in a situation to grow anything. It's just going to sit there and struggle. Okay. So the reason if the soil was ready to grow better plants, it would do it all by itself. So your number one thing right now is to begin feeding your soil. So you need to get it covered and you need to begin feeding it. Right? So what that typically means is some type of mulch or cover. So that can be old hay, it can be chips, leaves, straw, whatever, and then be some type of breakdown. So old hay is the best. Do you have animals now? Okay, so the best thing that I encourage you to do, go to a farmer that's trying to dump some like half round bales because they're all just rotted to nothing, right? They probably want them out of their field for maybe nothing. Get those round bales, feed them to your animals. They will eat maybe 10% of it. They'll tread in the rest. They'll spread it around. That's your mulch. That's your cover. That's some of your seed bank. And it begins feeding your soil. So it covers your soil. It begins feeding your soil. Then suddenly you begin that soil organic matter contact right there at the soil surface. And you might only build a micron of good organic matter soil this year, but that's going to begin to snowball, right? And so again, I would not really buy any seed. I wouldn't buy any fertilizer. I would just buy some junky old hay like that, begin feeding on that. And that works I've done that tons of times. I've done it on 5 acres, 10 acres, 100 acres, and it works. And it's something that you probably need some more fertility for your feed anyway. Go ahead. Yes, sir. Okay, if you have really rocky soil and you can't put in fence posts, great question, young man. Well, here's the thing. Do you have any pasture at all? Is it growing grass at all? It is growing grass at all. Okay, great. So just to show you how dedicated we are to daily movement, my grandfather took tires, poured cement in them, and put pipe in them so that it would hold the stake, meaning it's that important to do it. Another example I've heard is that they actually carry, you can get those like 3-foot masonry bits from a hardware store and carry a drill. And I've seen people in like real desert climates, they're setting in posts, they're actually drilling in with that masonry bit and setting the posts in that with the drill. And what happens is over time, the soil begins to get better. Like I was just telling this lady over here, your soil begins to get deeper, get thicker. Your topsoil gets better and better. And suddenly, by the time you're a grown up, you're going to be pushing these stakes in by hand, and you're not having to do that anymore because you're using your best practices, right? So those are just 2 suggestions, or just continuing to find, like, don't worry about straight fences. That's another thing. Don't worry about straight fences. The cows don't care. So you can kind of look at the land, figure out, okay, I got a rock outcropping here, I got a rock outcropping there. I think I can slip my fence right through here, or I can slip it through and I can dog over here to, okay? That's that age-old wisdom talking story, right? So suddenly if you do that all your life, you're gonna know exactly where that deep soil is and be able to, oh, I can set this fence up real easy. Send somebody else out, they're gonna be hitting rock all the time. So consider that it's worth doing. My point is moving the cattle and using this electric fence to do it is worth doing, even if it takes you a long time, right? You move in pasture poultry. We had an apprentice that moved to the Sonora, Mexico, just below Arizona. And so every day before he moved the chicken shelters, he had to clear off all the mesquite, all the green stick, drag that over, throw it in by hand. Then he had to rake off all the rocks and boulders and rake all that off. And then he moved the chicken shelters. So he's like, Daniel, when you think you work, I work. You don't work. I'm like, you're right. I don't. 6 months later, it finally rained, and it grew this beautiful oasis of grass. And he's like, I want to do that to my whole 12 square mile ranch. It's beautiful. So it's worth the effort because it works. Yes, go ahead.
So when you're just starting out, how much time are you going to be dedicated to marketing?
Right. Talking about marketing. How do we market? Okay, good point. If you don't sell anything, then it's just a fun little hobby. Good point. Well, here's the other thing. If you don't have something good, you don't have anything to sell. So what I recommend, honestly, is your first time is get this list nailed down, because you won't have time to market if you're hauling water. I'll pick on water. I've picked on water the whole time. I'll just keep picking on water. But if you're hauling water, you don't have time to market, right? You're hauling water. Okay, so let's stop hauling water. Okay, the lowest haul in the bucket, let's stop hauling water. Because as soon as you stop hauling water, you're going to have time to market, right? And so what I'm encouraging you to do is get those little things nailed down now, because right now you're probably trying to market, 100 birds or 50 birds or some eggs or whatever. And you're small. That's perfect. It's great, all right? Let's get these up, because you're not having to sell a lot. You just need a couple minutes to sell, right? So let's sell just a little bit, and let's fix these other problems too, so that when we're trying to sell 1,000 birds, we have more time to market, right? Now, again, can improve on it. Dave Ramsey, you are successful at what you put attention on, right? And so if you put attention on marketing, a lot of times you're real successful. If you don't put attention on marketing, you don't sell anything, right? And so just balance it. There are times when you got to be all in the business, on the business side, the production side, and there's sometimes you got to be all in the marketing side, and you just kind of have to watch and see how it grows. I wish I had a more specific answer. Oh, it's 5 hours a day or 5 hours a week. It's not, but nail down that easy stuff so you have time for it later. Absolutely. Yeah, that's exciting. Yes, you've been very patient. Thank you.
Thank you. So going back to the hay thing and laying down the hay.
Mm-hmm.
So what if you buy some hay for winter, you buy big old round
Mm-hmm.
bales, and you open them up, and now you've got 6 round bales with goat's heads that nobody wants, and you don't want them on your pasture. You fed a few of them, but
Right. You're talking about a negative, that's a negative plant.
yeah.
Okay.
And now you got these goat's heads
Right.
out in the field, and now
Yep.
you got 3 more bales in the barn that you don't want.
Keep feeding it. It's okay, because here, why is that? So you're talking about, what about if you bring hay in, it's got seeds that you don't want? Here's the problem. Remember, I told this yesterday, so if you were listening to me yesterday, just close your ears or hear it for the second time. The grass species on your farm will only grow what the soil is capable of growing to best match your management practices. It's not the seeds. The seeds were already there. Okay? Now, it encouraged it or whatever, it's fine, but don't stress about seeds. When we go out there, do not stress. Everybody repeat after me. I am not worried about weeds. Ready? I am not worried about weeds. Okay, thank you very much. You're going to go home now, you're going to look at your, and you're not going to worry about weeds, because farmers spend 90% of their brain power worrying about weeds. It's not that important. Look about all this other stuff. Focus on that. It's a whole lot more fun, and it's a whole lot more permanent. Those weeds will be gone in days. Sometimes, well, not days necessarily, but usually years or months. Very finite, very not permanent, okay? Embrace it. It's no big deal, because that plant is growing for a reason, for something to do. The soil needs it for something. Now, do I say not mow it down after the cows have grazed? Of course not. I said mow it down. That's fine. But don't stress out, because the thing is, if you say, well, I'm not going to buy any hay because I might get bad seeds. Oh, wait a minute. No, my soil is terrible, so I'm not going to grow anything like you're talking about there. So I'm never going to get any organic matter growing, which means I'm not going to get my soil better, which means I am pledged to not worry about weeds. Okay? So use the hay, building organic matter, building soil fertility, okay? is your number one goal for stability and for weathering all problems. Okay? So if you're bringing in fertility with hay, that's a good thing. Let it go through its cycles. It'll get better. I think you got to quit. Go ahead. Maybe one more and I got to quit. Go ahead. Say that.
Wooded property to pasture.
Oh, okay. So the question is, what is wooded property to pasture ratio do I suggest? We typically say like 1/3, 2/3, as far as those 1/3 woods to 2/3 pasture. Oh, changing the woods to pasture. Oh, how would I do it? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood the question. I apologize. Okay, so how would I best way changing woods to pasture? Okay, we got another 7 hours to talk about that. No, I'm kidding. In short, harvest the woods however you want to do it, whether it's yourself, a logger, chip it, brush hog it, whatever you got to do. You can worry about the stumps or you can leave them. I don't really care. What we typically, so here's our practice right now. I'll just tell you exactly how we do it. You can apply whatever you want to do. We'll go in, we'll harvest the timber. We'll harvest everything, cut every tree, every stick, every stalk, cut everything. Then we're going to go back in there that winter when it's dormant, and we're going to feed enough junky hay on that land to leave literally 6 to 10 inches of old, uneaten hay, stubble, chaff, whatever you want to call it, stalks on that ground. Okay, so we might only clear off 2 acres this winter or 1 acre this winter, whatever. Then we're going to go in there. We're going to leave the cows in that area. We're going to put them in small paddocks. So we're going to give them daily bale. We can bale graze. We can spread it out. You can roll it out, whatever you want to do. But at the end of the day, we're going to feed multiple times. Okay, so we're building layers and layers and layers and layers of this hay. So at the end of the day, we've got 6 to 12 inches of hay on top of the ground. That's fine because what that does is that turns into black gold next year. And what we found is that immediately changes your soil conditions from growing trees because the soil was set up to grow trees first. Now you're doing it because of your decomposition and your fertility building. You've changed it over to be ready to grow grass right away. Okay? Now, you still have your stump sprouts. You still have some brush trying to creep in, but you put down so much mulch that most of the area around the tree stumps is going to grow grass and not something else. So, again, if you only have put down enough for 4 inches, that's something. Just do a lot, right? Even if they muddy it up, that's fine. Let them make a mess. It's okay. Because what you're trying to do is begin changing over your soil quality and content from being wood stuff to being pasture stuff. And that's what we've done. And if you want to put pigs in there, great, and keep that going forward, that's awesome. If you want to do goats to eat some of the brushy stuff, that's fine, sheep, whatever. But that's the kind of thing that you would do. And again, the only mechanical stuff we've used at that point is either just chainsaw and tractor removal, and that's it. Okay, so you're not like renting a Mini X to dig up all the stumps and all that. And again, if you want to make a hay field, then you got to do that. But the cows don't care eating around the stumps. They're fine. Okay, it's very forward. All right.
Same question.
Yep.
If you don't have animals yet.
Yes.
So we've got 40 acres.
Great.
And 5 of them are for pasture.
Right.
35 are wooded.
Great.
And we're looking at expansion.
Sure. Okay, so he said the question is, I have a bunch of wooded area. I don't have a lot of pasture yet. I don't have animals. Should I do the pasture conversion first? No, I would say get animals to match your acreage now, your pasture, and then slowly work into as you convert, you can just get more animals a little bit at a time, and just grow into whatever you clear. I mean, if you want to have a logger come in and log it all off, that's your choice, but we're very...
The question, though, is more about turning it into grass.
Oh, yeah.
So just lighting all the hay on there.
Yep. That'll do it. Yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure. Over time. Absolutely. All right. Blessings on you. Thank you for your time. You've been incredibly patient. Blessings. And may there never be a for sale sign in front of your homestead.